Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Duke of Italy, favorite lo-fi music YouTuber, and today it is the last classics review we are doing this year. Of course, it is the 29th, so we've only got so many days left anyways, but I do have one more video planned for this year, and then of course the album of the year list, which I've been working pretty hard on, and it's really tough to wind down because, I've listened to just so many albums from this year, and very few of them feel important in the grand scheme of things, but I've got some really hard hitters at the end here, because one thing I like to do is I watch other YouTubers' top 10 videos, and then if I love any of those, I might put it in my list, and two of those I've already been considering, but we'll get into that later, because today we're covering something not from this year, but from a very long time ago, the 1970s. This is Stevie Wonder's Innervisions. And one thing I'm very excited about is that I've never covered anything soul related here. I've covered very few funk albums. I've covered pretty much very few things that are even in the realm of Stevie Wonder. And I think some of his discography is a bit slept on. When you think of Stevie Wonder, you really just think of Songs in the Key of Life, Sir Duke, of course, Superstition, which is a banger. People sometimes forget that a good chunk of his hits are off of Innervisions, and for good reason. This album is incredible. Not only does it have the hard funk style that he's been using a lot so far, it's got a lot of really poignant lyrics, a lot of very interesting topics, phenomenal playing from Stevie Wonder. I don't know if you guys knew this, but Stevie Wonder doesn't just play keyboard and piano and basically any instrument that you play keys on, but he also plays guitar, bass, drums. When Stevie Wonder made his debut in the 60s and they called him the amazing Stevie Wonder, they meant it. The dude was a amazing talent, really one of a kind. In terms of composers, multi-instrumentalists, singers out there, as a combo, it does not get any better than Stevie Wonder. But one thing that Innervisions has over a lot of similar projects at the time is a real sense of spirituality, some really cool sort of religious aspects, and a huge dose of psychedelia in a few of these tracks. And the first track that you can definitely tell this sense of psychedelia, which it doesn't bring nearly the gripping energy that tries to beat you over the head that a opener typically would, but it's rather the intrigue of the track that really is the appeal here. The opening track, Too High, it is still funky and it is somewhat lax, but the keyboard playing is very lush, and the Stevie Wonder singing just adds on top of it for another amazing element. And as much as the song has a lot going for it, with the chorus being all warbly and incredibly psychedelic, he adds a harmonica solo just because he feels like it, but the texture added from the harmonica solo is actually really appealing. And then about 3.5 minutes in, there's actually a key change that it just sort of lifts off, and it sounds just sublime, and it keeps on going through these really crazy changes, and it really shows off Stevie Wonder's sort of compositional chops here. And the ending of this track is packed with energy. It sort of boils down to this really psychedelic section that is one of the best parts of the album. And the next track is Visions, which if you go into this album for a full funk experience front to back, you're not going to get it strictly probably because of Visions, because this song is a super lush, acoustic, borderline chamber folk type of ballad here. And the singing and the message here is about a sort of possible world where everyone could be beyond their differences and not only find outer peace, but inner peace as well. Which, for me, I don't find this to be the most incredible message that Stevie Wonder has talked about. It's probably the weakest on the album, but world peace is a thing we're always going to strive for, and it's never going to be an outdated subject. But the way the lyrics are actually portrayed here is actually very stunning. It's actual poetry as he's singing along with this song that sounds just as beautiful in the terms of words he's saying as the instrumental. There's also an electric guitar line that adds a really nice psychedelic layer to the whole thing. And there's a really thick, upright bass sound, which adds so much body, so much texture. It adds one of the most appealing parts of the track, and it's a really nice change from the electric bass that was used on the previous track, but it makes just a really pleasant sound overall. And it's honestly one of the most intriguing instrumentals that you'll ever hear because it's still very psychedelic, just interesting overall. The melodies are beyond insane, and it's the sound of the thing as a whole. As it all comes together, you got all these creaking wooden sounds combined with this really slick electric guitar, and it makes for a very interesting sound, and it's something that you're going to remember for a while. The next track is a real classic that if you don't know it, just go check it out right now. This one's called Living for the City. It's probably one that your parents have played. I mean, not my parents, but parents just as cool as mine, mom and dad. Thanks for supporting me. Now it's got this minimalist, tense build that just rolls and rolls as it gets ready to just let loose. And Stevie's voice is intensely powerful. It's got just a little bit of that really iconic 70s sort of natural sense of reverb, as he's probably just a little bit back from the mic. And there's a super slick break right after the first verse. But the verse itself is really nice. It sort of tells the story of a black man during segregation who has to deal with all these troubles of a mom who's barely earning enough, a father that's in and out of jail because of, the oppression of the time. But it's actually a rather inspiring track, as this album tends to be very inspiring against all this sense of opposition. It is an immensely inspiring track. And the hook of living just enough for the city is intensely powerful. I challenge you to find a modern vocalist who's just as powerful, who also has lyrics that matter. And there's also a spoken word sort of little interlude section that I don't think is aged perfectly and made it sort of keep up this level of quality through to today. But it's sort of like this little section of a man who's a black man who's just in, I believe, New York City, and he's handed a box and was going to be given a lot of money to deliver it just across the street, but it's a setup and he's caught by the police and he goes into jail for a very long time. And the huge switch up that goes right back into the verse is really effective and adds a lot of energy. Very inspiring song, and also the instrumental is just super funky. And the chorus, it's just him singing like da da da, but like it's so slick, it's so impressive. It really shows off his vocal chops. So you already got on this album a ton of variety that you can't find it anywhere else. And next you get probably one of my favorite tracks, Golden Lady. You get this incredibly lush opening sound that really defines this track as the sort of lush moment of the album. And it switches into this really captivating verse. And it hangs on one note for probably like the first 2/3 of the little refrain that it goes through. And it barely switches, and it almost feels spiritual. And the chorus is absolutely lit up as he sings Golden Lady. And it's got these horns and these keys that all fit so well together. And it's really impressive because I know the production of the time does not make everything sound good, but here it sounds, well, for lack of a better term, golden. For real, it's one of the best choruses in history. And it key changes further, up and up and up as it goes and fades out through the rest of the song. I do wish there was some sort of instrumental breakdown that sort of finished it, because I know Stevie Wonder could compose one. But at the same time, like, this song is just too classic. It's too iconic. The lyrics are so great. It's so beautiful. Like, dude, I feel beautiful listening to this thing. But definitely, fellas, if you're standing outside someone's house with the boombox over your head and it's not Golden Lady, I don't know what you're doing. We all love Peter Gabriel, but Stevie Wonder's probably better. Then you get the track that some people know for the cover version by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. This is Higher Ground. And this is probably the part of the album that has the most amount of energy, and it is that good. It's some of the best vocals on the record, and it is some of the bounciest funk that you get hit with here. So much energy. It's nothing but a banger, a hit, a pop masterpiece, if you want to call it pop, but I think it's just supersedes anything. And it's a song that's really just about getting a second shot at life, which is a really perfect and interesting sort of concept to work with, especially with how energetic it is. It is probably the most straightforward track on the album, but it is a perfect single. I don't know if it was used as a single, but if it was, good idea. But it's a really great way to sort of like break apart any lack of engagement in the album or any doubt in the listener's mind that this thing wasn't going to have a moment that really just sticks the landing. It keeps a very consistent sound. It does something that isn't too abstract or weird, because the tracks before are all amazing, but none of them really get the amount of punch that Higher Ground does, and Higher Ground is just excellent for that. And it's actually one of the more simple instrumentals. It's really just drums and keys, and there's probably a little bit more, but it's really not as much as the huge, thick key sound that jumps up the octaves. But it's insane. I mean, if you don't know Higher Ground, I don't know why you are watching this video before probably my How to Get Into Music video, because you gotta listen to this. The next track is Jesus, Children of America, which is a track that sort of critiques modern religious institutions. And I think one thing that while listening to this, you might want to keep track of is Stevie Wonder was raised Christian, and I believe he still is Christian. So his critique here is certainly with nuance. It's certainly not just your average atheist on Reddit who's like super edgy, and it's like, oh, God isn't real, you have the little magic book, your little sky daddy. It's actually something of substance here, because it's not criticizing the concepts of religion or anything stupid like that. It's criticizing institutional religion, and certainly that in America. In terms of the actual criticisms it makes, this is probably the most poignant track on the album. The how reserved it is feels great as well. The backup singers on this track are really one of the better elements here. It really gives an extra bit of body to the vocal section. And Stevie's voice, it shows there's a bit of bitterness within Stevie Wonder here. He shows a lot of grit in his voice, which I think this is probably the best track to do it, because it's clearly one to show some frustration. And the key line, the keyboard playing from Stevie Wonder, is a massive highlight. Next we get the track All in Love is Fair, which is a beautiful romantic track, a little bit like Golden Lady, but a little bit more subdued. This is quite possibly the most simple track on the record here, as it's just really gorgeous piano playing from Stevie Wonder, the compositional master, and his voice that he just lets loose. It is very nice romantic soul music. It doesn't get any better than that in this particular niche. This is a track that really highlights the pacing. It works really well. You could really feel the passion. It gets quite intense as it builds and builds. And it's a nice track to have that just really shows off Stevie Wonder's voice. Not a lot of tracks here have a more subdued, more minimalist instrumental that's just like one or two things plus vocals, but this is a really nice case where that happens. And the next track is actually a ton of energy, as it sort of has this Latin pop flair to it. This is this track, Don't You Worry About a Thing, and it's this huge shift to the album because, Latin soul wasn't explored on the rest of this album here, but, the time is now. And Stevie Wonder does not waste his time, as this track is phenomenal. This is one of the most smooth moments on the track. For not being as explicitly romantic necessarily, it feels incredibly slick. And there's sort of this refrain that repeats a couple times, but it's got this little addition of like this chromatic slide that goes right before the bridge that is so impressive and so slick. It adds a little bit of jazzy flair that Stevie Wonder brought from his earlier days. It's just phenomenal. And the drums fly off against the piano. It's almost like it's syncopated against each other, but it's got so much energy packed inside. It's one of the most danceable parts of this album, and it is just so smooth. It really makes you want to dance. I've seen people sing this song at karaoke at parties, and for good reason. It's a very challenging track in terms of vocals, because Stevie Wonder's really flexing his range here. It goes really quite high, and the way he embellishes every single chorus adds so much energy. You're not going to get bored with this thing. The final track is He's Mr. Know-It-All. I don't know what that title really means, but there's a theory that it is critiquing Richard Nixon. This track is actually quite gorgeous, but it has a use of sarcasm that isn't seen really since Jesus Children of America. The instrumental is also very vibrant. It just sounds incredible, but you really don't need me to say that at this point. I'm sounding like a broken record with how much this album is gorgeous. And the triumphant sound here sort of kind of mimics the Living for the City idea, where we will carry on as a society despite this opposition and the cruelty of those above us. And it's a more relaxed track. It's a bit of a somber note to end on. It closes out this psychedelic whirl that no other artist has really been able to mimic since. Yeah, this album gets abased and red-pilled. It is phenomenal from start to finish. It's a little dated at a point or two, but at the same time, like, some of these tracks are so gorgeous. The instrumentals are fantastic. Some of the stuff holds up incredibly, and the huge dynamics between the huge lush orchestration and the really tiny sections on tracks just like All in Love is Fair shows some really excellent compositional chops. So this is just an album I recommend to everybody out there. You can play it in front of your kids, play it in front of your wife, play it in front of your family, play it in front of your dog, play it in front of anybody you know, because they're going to love it, because these songs are classic, they're phenomenal, and they're super fun. And that's about it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys enjoyed this album. Certainly as much as I do, because I love this thing. What are your guys' thoughts on this album? What's your favorite Stevie Wonder record? What's your favorite Stevie Wonder song? Go ahead and tell me in the comments down below. But if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, down there as well. My social media will be in the description there, as well as my Discord page if you'd like to join that. We're talking about Album of the Year content right now. And I would appreciate a like and a subscribe. And that's about it. Hope you guys are doing well out there. Have a good day. Bye.